Thank you so much for joining us today for a Paperless Partners webinar. Today, this is going to be hosted with myself from Paperless Parts and Fulcrum. So what is Paperless Partners? This is a brand new monthly webinar series that we're starting this week with Fulcrum. So it's basically going through the partners that Paperless Parts has joined with to drive better solutions across the industry for our customer base. We are really excited to be doing this one with Fulcrum because when you look at Paperless Parts and Fulcrum, they really complement each other. Both companies are very tech-forward, web-native, API-first companies. And the ability to integrate the two platforms really drives huge benefits for our shared customer base. So this is a pretty interesting webinar where we have some folks on the line that are Paperless Parts customers only and might be looking for ERP solutions. We have some folks on the line that are using Fulcrum as an ERP and might be considering Paperless Parts for a quoting and estimating solution. And then there's some that already have both, and then there's some that might have none. So we're really looking forward to showing off today how Paperless Parts can integrate with Fulcrum to drive synergies across your business and at the end of the day, make more money for your shop. So what are we going to do today? We're going to run through a quick round of introductions. Then I'm going to jump in and run through a quick Paperless Parts quoting demo. Then we're going to talk about some of the integration behaviors between the two systems. And then Alex from Fulcrum is going to run through a Fulcrum system demo. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to throw them into the Q&A box that you'll see in your Zoom console. And we will answer those at the end of this session. So a quick round of introductions. My name is Alex Renner, and I'm a business architect here at Paperless Parts. What that means is I work with some of our larger customers to determine what are the right integrations and workflows needed to successfully implement Paperless Parts into the broader tech stack that shop might be operating with. Prior to this role, I did implementations where I successfully implemented over 50 customers from either no quoting solution or a different quoting solution into Paperless Parts. And then before I joined Paperless Parts, I spent about 8 years at GE Aviation in various roles across the supply chain, from sourcing, direct leadership, to a manufacturing engineering role where I was a technical leader most recently. So that's a little bit about me. And I'm going to hand it over to Alex Tresh from Fulcrum to give a quick introduction.
Hey guys, yeah, I'm Alex. I lead product at Fulcrum. I've been with the team for about 7 years now, and super excited to show you more about how we integrate with Paperless Parts and some more Fulcrum functionality in general.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Hey, Matt, do you mind just jumping in and giving us a quick intro of yourself?
Of course. Matt Soucie. I'm president of CAMM Metals. Been here since 1998. I'm the second generation owner of the business. Dad has since retired, and we're a primary sheet metal shop. As I mentioned earlier, we just bought a laser tube machine. We do welding and fabrications for a number of industries.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I think it's just important to set the stage kind of a little bit about what your shop is, and then as we go through this demo today, we're going to hear a little bit about how you've been using both Paperless Parts and Fulcrum together and how we've been able to drive more synergies and efficiencies across your business. Anything else you wanted to add about CAMM, Matt? Or you are?
I think that's probably pretty good. I'm excited to share our experience about using Paperless and Fulcrum. The synergies, as you've been saying, are tremendous. One alone is great, but both together, it's really taken us into some modern technology that we just didn't have before.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things, right? I think that the sum of the parts is greater than the individual. So before we jump into the demo, why Paperless Parts and Fulcrum? So on the front end of things, you have Paperless Parts that allows you to turn around faster and more accurate quotes, blending part geometric interrogations with automation to quickly come up with accurate quotes for your buyers. We've seen time and time again that the speed to quote is key for increasing win rates across our customer base. Then when you integrate paperless parts with Fulcrum, you're really able to streamline your operations and reduce the need for double data entry between the two systems. And then we also have, because of a lot of the connective tissues that have been built between paperless parts and Fulcrum, we make it really easy to collaborate securely across both systems. And personally, I'm a visual person, so I put in just a very high level process map here at the bottom of this slide. Because some folks are, they'll ask questions around like, well, where do I use paperless? Where do I use Fulcrum? So on the bottom, we have the orange, which signifies paperless parts, and then we have the blue, which signifies Fulcrum. So really, paperless parts is going to come in for your estimating and costing, quote sent, and then PO placed. After that PO is placed, that's where the integration is going to send information over to Fulcrum in the form of a sales order. And then you're going to kick off all of your downstream processes after that PO has been placed and we've converted that quote to an order within paperless parts. So with that being said, let's take a look at paperless parts. So let's get out of the slide deck. And I'm going to start this demo here in my email inbox. So this is how we see a large percentage of quotes come into our customer base. I have an email from a buyer. It's, of course, it's a hot RFQ, and we have some part numbers and quantities associated that our customer wants us to quote for them. You can also see a handful of files down here across the bottom. So we've got some PDFs, we've got some step files associated with it. So how do I get this into paperless parts? First thing I'm going to do is just forward this into my paperless parts account. So I have set up a Fulcrum RFQs contact within my email, and I'm just going to press send, and that is going to start the process of moving those parts into paperless parts. So I'm going to jump over to paperless parts. So one of the great things about paperless is that we are fully web native. So we're able to take advantage of all the features and functionality that you're going to see in a Chrome tab, for instance, what I'm using right now. And if you caught that, you just saw quote 34 bounce into my account from the dashboard that I'm on right here. So there was about a 30-second to a minute delay. And what were we doing in that time? What we were doing is actually virus scanning all of those files to make sure that there wasn't any malware embedded within any of those files or PDFs or step files that were sent over. One of the things that we do to protect our shops from virus attacks and hacker infiltrations. And I've clicked into quote number 34. And what you're looking at here is a paperless parts quote header. I'm going to go ahead and start to fill in some RFQ information. So maybe I have my RFQ number. And I'm going to take a quick pause to point out some of the purple areas that you're going to see in the platform. Paperless Parts has invested heavily over the last, basically the last half of last year to put AI suggestions into the platform to help assist and speed up the quoting process. So as I work through this, any place you see a purple suggestion within Paperless Parts, that is us using AI to help speed up the quoting process. So we were able to pull in when this RFQ is actually sent to my email inbox. We read that email and we automatically assigned the contact and account associated with that email. And then if I scroll down, you're going to see all of the files associated with that email. So the first one is we actually categorized the RFQ email. I can click that open, and we can actually see the email that was sent into me, helping to track that digital thread. I have this here as a connective tissue with the quote itself. And then I have 5 supporting files that came in as well. So the first thing I'm going to do to set up this quote is bulk create line items. And when I do that, you can see that we actually went through and read that email, and we suggested part numbers and quantities based off of the text within that email field. And I'm just going to verify those. If they look good, I'm going to hit create line items. So that just created 3 blank line items. And then Paperless Parts has recognized that, hey, these line items on the left-hand side over here look really similar to these supporting files that we see over on the right-hand side. So I'm actually going to add those supporting files with a click of a button over to the left-hand side. So we just basically sucked those supporting files from the supporting files area over and we created 3 line items. So with a couple of clicks, I was able to forward this email in. The files were virus scanned. We read the quantities, we confirmed them, and then we created 3 line items. And what do those line items look like? I'm just going to scroll down and we can take a look at the highly visual nature of paperless parts. So we have 3 parts on this quote. And I'm going to go ahead, and the first thing I want to do is open up the part viewer. And I want to assign in paperless parts what we call a process, material, and finish. So a process, material, and finish is basically a process is the dynamic router steps or costing elements that are applied to a quote to help come up with a cost and a price. We're going to see some AI suggestions here. So we were able to scan this print and pull in the part number, which I can see down here. And the revision, it grabbed as revision A. So I'm going to select that one. I'm going to plug in my description. Looking at this, I can tell this is a pretty straightforward sheet metal part. So I'm going to grab my sheet metal fab process and plug in my 5052 material. Just for the sake of demo, I'm going to throw on a powder coating outside finish as well. Now let's jump to the next part. So the next part on this is going to be an assembly. And one of the things that I want to call out is that when you load a step file into paperless parts, we're able to automatically parse out this BOM and establish all the parent-child relationships within an assembly file. This can be really powerful because with the integration with Fulcrum, they're actually able to generate this BOM and router from what you quote in paperless parts, which saves our shops a ton of time and effort from manually creating line items and basically BOM elements that you would see within a complex assembly. So I'll hit update there. And then I'll jump to my last item, which if I take a look at this PDF, I'm going to be able to grab the material and I can see this is a CNC part. So I'll grab my CNC machining process and plug in my material. So I'm going to hit update there. Cool. So now that I've assigned my costing elements to all of these parts, let's go ahead and what we're going to push today is this simple sheet metal part right here. But I do want to just show off the assembly quickly because this can be really powerful for our customers. So here is my BOM in a parent-child relationship, and then I'm going to flip that over to flat. And you can see how quick and easy this is to go through and identify which components are part of this assembly. And we also have a partnership with PEM where we were able to go through and identify 3 PEM components on this assembly. And then we were able to pull in live pricing via API for these components. But just seeing how we're able to pull this apart and then pass this to Fulcrum is really powerful for a lot of our shared customers. The part that we are going to look at in particular today is going to be this simple sheet metal bracket here. Now I'm going to open up the part viewer. And Matt, I think you were talking to me a couple of weeks ago about some of the value that your team has found in the part viewer with the warnings. Do you mind just talking through a little bit of those for us?
Sure. Yeah. In the bottom left of the view here, there's some sheet metal warnings. It's very easy as estimators for us to look at a part, feel the crunch to get a quote to our customers or our prospects as soon as we can. And we might overlook things. And if you get that order, that might mean something pretty significant. It might mean it's more expensive to make a part. It might mean you can't make a part. But these sheet metal warnings in paperless notify the estimator of some very easy to overlook things that you need to take into consideration when you're estimating a part, when you're estimating the manufacturability and the lead time. So they're very handy. This part here doesn't, we looked at a part the other day here at the shop. It even notified us of a potential for a W bend. The software is very smart. It's very intelligent. It understands. Oh, there it is, right there at the bottom. So the software is great. It really notifies and warns the estimator of some real potential problems, and it's a great tool.
Yeah, and one of the other things we can do here is we can actually flag this warning. So say I was a junior estimator and I wasn't quite comfortable with our bend tooling and I didn't know if this was something we would even want to take on. I could actually flag Matt on this and say, hey, Matt, I'm not so sure. Do you mind taking a look at this? And Matt, using his expertise, could chime in ahead of basically sending the quote to take a look at this from his more senior view to me and verify if this was something we wanted to take on, or do we need to go back to our customer and look for a redesign?
We even use that here in the shop. My engineer, my foreman are also on paperless. So if at the quoting stage we have those questions, the estimator can hit up the engineer or the foreman and get their thoughts on those parts too.
Yeah, super powerful tool. And when I scroll through here, we have sheet metal interrogation results. We're able to generate the flat pattern where we can either nest this in an XY simple nest, or we do have a full sheet metal nesting module where we can do a best fit approximation for a true multi-component nest. And now we're going to look at this simple part and what are the costing elements associated with it. A lot of our shops, they start with material estimation. And you can see that we have 39 cents of material. This is a really small part that we're working with. And when I open this up, I want to call out that this material selection is something that we would actually import from Fulcrum. So Fulcrum's developed the integration to have a live sync into paperless parts. And using paperless parts geometric interrogation, we're able to intelligently look at the part size and then go through and actually choose what the best sheet is to nest this part within. And if anybody's kind of used to what the back-end tables look like in Fulcrum, you can actually see this data, which are fields that exist within Fulcrum. If I jump over to where this lives in paperless parts, we have a concept called custom tables. And you can see Fulcrum raw material table right here. And this is all of the raw material records that we can bring into paperless, use those as reference data for costing and pricing, and then basically intelligently select which materials should be used in an operation while utilizing the cost that you have stored within your ERP system. Moving down, we have a laser cut, a deburr, bend, inspection, and then a powder coating operation. I'm going to slide this powder coating operation right prior to inspecting. And then, Matt, do you want to jump in and talk a little bit about how your shop is using either laser cut or bend operation, or how you're using some of the automation here within the system?
We use automation for 4 out of those 5 steps.
Nice.
It's really great. Yeah. So during onboarding, we worked with paperless parts to provide them with information about our laser, our cutting rate, pierce time, and so the estimation capabilities in paperless for our laser cutting are spot on. They're great. So as long as we have a DXF file or a step file, paperless figures out our laser cutting time. We have a predetermined setup time. That number plugs in automatically, and then we get a runtime for the part. Same for the deburring. It's geometry based. So we primarily are going to use our time saver like we're doing here. If the part is too small for our time saver, which for us is anything less than 4 inches square, the software knows that becomes a hand deburring operation, not a time saving operation, and it calculates it differently. Bending, again, paperless identifies a number of bends, and we have a predetermined time per bend, so it calculates setup time for us and a runtime.
Awesome.
We outsource powder coating. I would like to get that automated, but at this time I just send it out to my vendor and wait for them to get back to me.
Awesome.
And yeah, and again for inspection, it's a predetermined time.
Awesome. And yeah, I think that this bending operation is really straightforward, just to connect the dots between the bends that you saw in the part viewer. And then if we look at this bending cost operation, we actually have 6 bends that we're populating this bend count variable from. And then we're going to multiply that by the time per bend to come up with an estimated cost for this operation. And I want to draw a note to, we have notes available on every field, every operational field within Paperless Parts. So I'm going to put in here, warning, W bend required, watch out for tooling collision, something, a piece of information I want to pass over to Fulcrum. So we're going to jump from here and we'll just take a look at the costing bucket. So in Paperless Parts, we have the ability to break out what your raw material, inside, outside, and purchase component costs are across a line item. We have the ability to add category-specific markups or margins to each of those. And then we can see on this particular part, we've got a unit price right here of $238 for quantity 1 and $17.20 for quantity 50. The last thing that I'm going to show here is just the preview of what a digital quote looks like. We offer the ability to send both a PDF quote for our more traditional customers, buyers, and a digital quote that you see here on the screen. Matt, just real quickly, do you want to talk a little bit about what you've seen for adoption, or using the digital quote or the PDF quote today?
I had some personal hesitation about breaking away from PDFs. We've sent our customers PDFs for forever. But I'd say after the first couple of weeks, I gave up on the PDF. It's strictly digital now. I know as soon as my customers and my prospects click on the quote, I know when they viewed it. It's a tremendous tool to be able to call customers and follow up. Get some real feedback, and it's great for traceability and understanding who's seeing our quotes, and it's a great tool.
Yeah, I think that one of the things we constantly hear a lot of really good feedback on is the ability to just give buyers that one last chance to make sure that the part that you are quoting them is actually what they wanted to buy. All too often we hear about a buyer attaching the wrong file, and it leads to scenarios where there's confusion, potentially supply chain delays. So we offer buyers the ability to take a look at the actual geometry. You can communicate what process material and finish you're using, as well as general overall size. So I'm going to close out of that. And we're just going to assume that I finalized this and sent this over to the buyer. And I'm going to go through what we call the facilitate order workflow, where I'm going to essentially create a order from this quote or win the quote. So I'm going to select my shipping address and my billing address, and then I'm going to hit complete order. So when I win that quote, that's going to generate an order in Paperless Parts. And that is where the trigger point is to actually pass information over to Fulcrum. And the reason for that is part of the philosophy of this integration is that we want to keep Paperless Parts as your central source of truth for all things quoting. But when we look across industry, we see an average win rate of right around 30%, which means that 70% of the parts that you're quoting are never going to actually turn into a production order. So what the integration does is when we win the quote, it passes over to Fulcrum. And we keep Fulcrum, or your ERP, is only going to be responsible for true production parts, which has the opportunity to keep your system 70% cleaner than it would be if we were actually flooding your ERP with quotes that you were never actually going to make the part for. So with that, I'm going to bounce out of Paperless and turn the mic over to other Alex, who's going to show us how that came into Fulcrum and where we pick it up in the quoting workflow, or in the cash to quote workflow. Yeah,
for sure. So yeah, that sales order already came over into Fulcrum after Alex said he hit the button to facilitate the order. Before I jump into some of the details and demo of everything in Fulcrum, just want to touch on kind of who Fulcrum is, what we're all about. So yeah, we as a company, Fulcrum fundamentally believes we're at a very pivotal sort of shift with how manufacturing businesses are run right now, in a very similar way to what happened with the CNC completely replacing manual mills and lathes in the 70s. We see software automation starting a really similar wave of sort of change, and that the businesses that can harness these types of tools are the ones who are going to sort of come out on top. So that's what we're all about as a company. And I think, as Alex sort of mentioned, I think that's also why our philosophy is a really natural fit with paperless parts. We have a really similar ideology when it comes to automation. And at our core, we're a tech company. So we're applying the latest technology out there to manufacturing specific problems. So yeah, our product aims to increase the speed of decision making in your business by automating a lot of those really complicated production related decisions, and then facilitating just a lot more communication and information sharing between people, so people in your business can make decisions faster. So you'll see that I'll kind of touch on those points throughout the demo of how we do that type of thing. But I think it's important to know, not everyone believes that this next wave of change is going to come from automation and things like that. That's okay. But if you're thinking about working with us, it's important because it is core to kind of who we are and really core to how our product is built as well. So yeah, with that, I will kind of jump in, and Matt, definitely jump in along the way with anything that I'm showing as well.
Okay.
Oh. Okay. All right. My Zoom controls around a bit here. A second. All right, so this is the sales order grid on the Fulcrum side. So basically what happened after Alex hit the button to facilitate that order, it pushed it from paperless parts over into Fulcrum, and it's sitting here now at the top of this list. So this top one that you see here is that new order that just came over. It came over in a draft status, and this can be sort of your indication for someone on the engineering team, whoever is sort of next in your process, to pick that up. And so I think something that Matt had mentioned was just like how quick it is to just move from quote to order, and then for like someone to just be able to jump on it sort of immediately.
We used to, before we had either system, there was a long process of trying to gather up emails, drawings, quotes, files, to gather all that up and hand it off to the engineer. Now the transfer from paperless into Fulcrum, as soon as that order comes in, my engineer has access to everything. It's all right there in Fulcrum, all the files, all the information, all the BOM and routing steps. It's the efficiency is something that can't be overstated.
Yeah, and so yeah, kind of like Matt just mentioned there, everything's coming over from paperless parts. So you have all of those drawings, all of the files, anything that you had sort of uploaded at that stage, that with links back to paperless parts, which Matt, I think this is something your team really appreciates as well, being able to jump between the two systems.
It does. Our estimator works remotely. So having the two software applications really bridges any gaps that might happen in communication with her being out of the office. All of us, the engineer, foreman, purchasing, we all have access to both platforms wherever we are.
Yeah. Yeah, so you have quick records, like links back and forth to all of the quotes and the orders. And then the other thing I'll touch on here is the BOM and routing. And so kind of like Alex mentioned, we're taking all that data from paperless parts and then using sort of translating it into the Fulcrum style bill of materials and routing structure on the other side. So this is our BOM and routing. This is the top, parent level item, raw materials, and then the routing steps here in the middle. And we can handle, more complicated assembly structures, things like that. But I'll touch on a few things here as well. So you're also getting all the notes and stuff. So maybe, Alex had left a note on the laser side of things. That's coming over, all the estimated times for everything, so that you're still getting that exact same roll up of your estimated costs on the Fulcrum side. And then there's other things that once it's in Fulcrum, you can sort of enrich the data with. So one example of that that I'll touch on, and you'll see it, how it sort of shows up to the operator on the other side of things, is in-process tracking points. So I can kind of set up different points of saying, okay, I need someone to measure this, or I want to make sure you do a drawing review, et cetera. So there's more you can kind of add once you're in here to start like editing or adjusting. So, great. All right, but this is super brief overview of the sales order. I mean, beyond this, it's your typical order information. You can add fees, other line items. You have all the header type of detail here, more notes. You can get into more, shipping types of details, and then ultimately you get at that document that you can send off, to your customer if you want to email out, an order confirmation from the Fulcrum side. Yeah, so on this, I'm actually going to push this forward. I'm not going to demo everything that there is in Fulcrum. So we handle a lot. There's sort of an alphabet soup of acronyms for everything between ERP and MES and MRP and all these things. So we handle, I would say, a portion of a lot of those in different ways. But we're touching on things from, sales to purchasing, production, scheduling. We touch on quality. We have some shipping, receiving functionalities, some invoicing, et cetera. So like I said, I'm not going to touch on all of those, but we'll do sort of a production type of workflow here. So yeah, I'm going to move this forward and create some jobs for this particular sales order. Close my tabs here. So yeah, we'll jump into the job side of this. So going from the sales order to the job, that's just breaking out sort of those line items for the shop team essentially, and then giving, another opportunity depending on what your process is with your production team or your foreman, or any sort of scheduling shop supervisors to come together on like, all right, well, what is the work that's going out into the shop? And taking a look at it. So this is sort of your list of all the jobs that are out there. And this is all sort of updated live based on how things are actually progressing on the shop floor. So Matt, I know you had mentioned this is also a spot that you guys kind of come together to just look at like what's going on, what's the sort of status of stuff.
We go over this every day. Myself, the foreman, the engineer, purchasing, we go over every job. I can see here, so the due date is very critical. The due date factors in the lead time for shipping. So the due date that you want to complete your job should take into account 1 day, 2 day shipping. So that due date ensures that you're going to get the parts to the customer on the day they need it. It's a small thing, but it really turns into a big thing. We can see jobs that are on time. We can see jobs that are scheduled to start. We can see jobs that are still in engineering that are set for review. It's such a powerful tool, and to have the thumbnail of the part or the assembly that's being built makes everything very easy to recall when you kind of get overwhelmed by all these part numbers and customers and things.
Yeah. So I would say like kind of similar to what Matt mentioned, a lot of customers we work with, they use that review state for engineering or someone else to take sort of the final look, give it a blessing before it would actually make it into production. So once you're in the job, yeah, you can review, again, drawings, you have all the same files that came over from, paperless parts and any edits that were made maybe at that sales order stage. Again, you can jump into the BOM and the routing here. And then, you'll see the material need. Do you actually have it? Do we need to maybe place orders? All of that. And once you feel good about it, you can approve it, submit it to be scheduled. And then from this point forward, we'll circle back to this jobs page, because this is now where this will start feeding live data back into this jobs page from the shop floor. So this is another one of those spots where we try and like just connect as much information as possible between all of the different teams. So anyone coming here later in the process to understand what's happening, they'll see live labor costs for how much has been incurred so far, live material costs. At this point, there's nothing yet. And, they'll see that margin, change in real time as well. You'll start to get updates of how far along each operation is, et cetera. So, yeah, we'll see that.
Alex, could I jump in and just show one other part?
Yeah, of course.
You might have to change it from in progress to review, but when we, so down bottom right, click on items, when you assign the material to a specific operation, say laser for that, that does a couple things. When you buy that material, the guys on the floor, the laser operator, will see that material has been ordered, and until that material arrives, he'll have a note that says material missing. When the material comes in and it's received, that note goes away, and the job scheduler will bump that job up on his list of operations to complete. So it's a very powerful tool for the guys on the floor to not have to wonder if material has arrived or not. Fulcrum tells them.
Yeah. I'm glad that you pointed that out. We're looking and taking into account your current on hand of everything, and then the POs that are out there and the expected receive date of those purchase orders as well, to understand what's here, what's expected to arrive, and taking all that into account for like the scheduling decisions as well. So, all right. So at this point, I'm going to move it forward and say, all right, this job is good to go. We're ready to throw it on the schedule. So I'll jump over into scheduling. So there's a lot going on this board. To kind of just orient you to what you're looking at here. You're looking at one column per piece of equipment that's set up. Equipment can be something like this too. That's just like an assembly station. Doesn't necessarily have to be a physical piece of equipment. So here's our, lasers. And then in each column, you're going to see the total backlog for that particular piece of equipment, how far out it's scheduled through. And then each card here is an operation step from, a different job. And so essentially what's happening here is our scheduling algorithm is totally automated. It's looking out across all of those jobs that you're wanting to get on the schedule. It's pulling apart all of the operations, understanding the dependency, sequence between everything, and then looking at the due dates of everything and the priority levels, and saying, all right, how do we get the most out the door on time as possible? So it's really trying to optimize for on-time delivery, while also taking into account, like Matt mentioned, your material availability. So here's a card here. You can see it says it's telling me the material is missing. So it's looking at, when are you going to get material in if you don't already have it, and then using that to also determine when it can schedule that operation to actually start. So yeah, there's a couple different flavors of the algorithm as well, depending on sort of what your priorities are as a shop, but generally it's trying to get optimized for getting the most work out the door on time. So high on-time delivery, while also minimizing your WIP on the shop floor. So yeah, I'll just rerun this, and it'll kind of pick up all the new, jobs. So it looks like, where our job ended up falling in here. Oh, 1056, sorry, is my job. Yeah, so I can look at my particular one that I was just looking at. And then if you click into it, that's where you can get like sort of a, condensed breakdown of that particular job and how it's scheduled. So I can see it's going to start today and then it'll end on Friday, it looks like. So yeah, so you can kind of dive down. You'll also always get a late percentage. So this is telling you these, cards outlined here, what percentage of, everything is late. So you can kind of filter down on that. But really the way that we think about the scheduler and the automation is it's taking this pass for you with all this data and spitting out, all right, here's our best guess at what your schedule should be. Typically people may want to make adjustments, right? Like you may need to make a slight adjustment here or there. There's a couple ways to do that. So if you're in the fully automated version of our scheduler, Primarily your tools to move things around are going to be changing the due date of something, so your production due date, to get it to sort of shuffle where it is, or the priority level. So this particular one is, medium priority. If I change that to high and then reschedule this, you should see it start to bump up. So now it's bumped up here, higher in this list than where it was before. So those are sort of some of your levers. There's more that you can take from the job to assign a specific piece of equipment to it. But if you want more control than that, there's also a version that we can turn on with some drag and drop functionality within the day. So you can drag and drop things around within a day. But then the rest of the schedule is sort of auto scheduled for you. And then, as it moves up, you're just sort of rearranging within the short term. So I know this piece can be a really big shift for teams, especially if you're used to having full control over this on a whiteboard or Excel spreadsheet. So Matt, I know you talked a little bit about the change with us for your team, but I don't know if you have any insight into what it was sort of like going from that to a fully automated version.
Sure, it was the biggest fear for all of us. My foreman, who does the scheduling, he'll tell you he doesn't like change. We had an Excel spreadsheet that we used for years, and we all knew that it wasn't great, but it was what we had. So there was a learning curve. There was time. I told him, and I told the whole team here, we've just got to let the process take its course. Let it be bumpy. Let yourself learn. We all learn at different paces, and so implementing the schedule, there was some nerves, really breaking out of that comfort zone, but I think so. We went live in October. I'd say we used, we rely on the schedule probably 80 to 90%. And now Todd is just making, minor selections when he's got maybe a more complex job and he wants to specify a person for something. But really, all the guys on the floor, they have their iPads, they have their own individual schedules, and we're relying on it.
Awesome.
And it's working.
Great. So, important point. I just saw in the chat a question about the drag and drop. So yeah, I can kind of show you. You can, to answer your question directly, you can drag and drop between equipment as long as they're a part of the same sort of equipment group, which is something that you just kind of set up. So I'm just going to turn this on quick so you can see it. So yeah, I'll go back over here. So now you can see I set a freeze window, which is basically just saying I can drag and drop within 1 day's time frame, but the stuff outside of that is still going to be auto scheduled. So you can take advantage of the scheduler kind of doing its thing. But here now I can pick stuff up and sort of move them back and forth between these two lasers are in the same equipment group. So yeah, you have a lot more control than to rearrange things. Great. So then from there, we'll jump into the job tracker. So this particular view is specifically for your shop team. So this is their view essentially of that schedule. And then it'll also be their tool to track time and materials and things against jobs. But different teams set this up in different ways depending on your shop setup. A lot of teams use iPads and have an iPad at each station. Some people actually have mounts at each station, so it's like sort of mounted right in front of them. Others, you have something that you want to move it around. Matt, I think you guys had mentioned you have iPads at each station, correct?
No, we handed each person got their own iPad.
Okay, gotcha.
So they walk around with them to wherever they happen to be working.
Yeah. Yeah, so in this particular view, I'm filtered for the laser. So this is essentially my list. Then I'm working at the laser today. Here's my list of everything that is scheduled for today and needs to get done. This is coming directly from that scheduler view and updates in real time. So if your scheduling person rearranges something, you're gonna see that sort of immediately here. And then it looks like we have all the materials in-house, but this is also where Matt was mentioning, if you didn't, you have a little flag on this to say material missing. So you're not, you know, trying to get into something that you can't actually start yet. Yeah. So
I know that, you know, we haven't, you know, done the engineering side of things and uploaded programs and such, but when the operator clicks on any one of these parts or operations to work on, in that view, in the bottom right corner, there's a little square, and down there is where they would find all the files that are attached to the order. We upload our laser programs, we upload a PDF for the laser program, that's in that view right there. The water jet programs, the laser tube programs, the press brake programs, the machining programs, all the shop drawings, all those files are right there on the iPad for anybody to look at. There's no more missing paperwork floating around the shop. It's all right there on their iPad. It's really a very powerful tool.
And I think you had mentioned sort of even something like helping you get younger team members like up to speed faster, of people who maybe aren't as familiar with certain aspects of manufacturing, being able to visualize a part when, you know, they're newer to the industry.
Yeah, young kid, 19, 20 years old, who might not have you know, a lot of background in CAD or in drawing or engineering or manufacturing. Now they have an isometric view right in front of them. There's no need to visualize what it is that they're building. It's right there in front of them. It's a great tool. And the other thing over there on the left, logging in and out to track your time. There's no more excuses out there on the floor. It's right there. It's a push of a button to track time. And so now we get great accurate time data on how long jobs are taking us.
A couple other things you can do from here. So like, yeah, Matt mentioned track your time. The materials are all listed here. So this is also where you'll see where it's stored, do the material picking. This is where I added a few of those operation checkpoints in the routing earlier. So this is optional, but you can add different things in to say like, hey, I want to make sure that you're doing some of these steps, make sure you did the drawing review, just check yes or no. You can put more complicated checkpoint things in, like, you know, tolerances or things like that, where people sort of enter that data as they go. This one's set up for every 10 parts, you know, asking them to do a measurement. And then it'll also flag if you're out of tolerance. So you can, you know, address it, obviously. And then you can kind of get like a graph too of, you know, how is it going? So you can see also if you're sort of drifting as well. Another, you know, point on this is you can start to chat. So this one, it looks like we had some previous chats in here, but someone, you know, on the Fulcrum side saying, yeah, this should have been good. I'll come look at it with you in a minute. So let's say that you needed help or something like that. You can, you know, tag someone in here. I can tag Alex because he's in our system now. And he'll get a notification on his side. So, yeah, kind of extending the chat functionality Alex was talking about on Paperless, and you have that same in Fulcrum too, so you can connect people together and, you know, get things solved faster. So yeah, bringing this back then to the job. So this one, I actively have, you know, timers running on it. I'll actually just go ahead and complete this. So you can see kind of what some of the progress looks like. So that's just jumping me to the next operation. But then let's go to that job here. So this is the one I was just in on the job tracker. I can see that it's actually progressing. I can see who was last in it. And then once you go into it, I'm getting the actual labor costs and everything sort of counting up live and then seeing the progress here. You can see notes and chat and all of that. So it's kind of bringing everything that's happening back from the floor into this job as well. So everyone on each side can actually see it. And Alex kindly responded to me, said he'll be there in a minute to help with the issue. So yeah, you'll start to get all of that stuff live, and then a more detailed breakdown also of the cost. So right now, there's not much in here yet, but this, yeah, will kind of show you all of your variances in a very like detailed sort of breakdown. Yeah, so I would say that's kind of a high level just of some of the production flow. But really, I think one of the things that Matt hit on whenever we were meeting about some of this earlier that I think is really core to Fulcrum is just giving you the information that you need when you actually need it. A really like simple spot that Matt's team uses is just, this is our list of all the purchase orders. Here are the ones that are late, and here's how late they are. Here's the contact, like who's going to call them. Like just putting all that information like right in front of you where you actually need it. So yeah, that's another, I don't know, just sort of like core to how the system is built.
Alex, I guess if there was one other thing I could say is that
For sure.
having the office and the shop now communicating on the same platform, everybody's using Fulcrum. The efficiency of which things happen in the company is so much better. Before we were digital in the office and we were paper based out on the shop floor, and there was a disconnect and you could feel it. Now we're all communicating in the same manner, and it's changed so much for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I think Matt, from like what you've shared, you've done a really great job at facilitating the change, like especially with a system like this and pairing it with something like paperless parts, like that can be a really big shift. It's touching the way that everyone in the business works and changing workflows. And so I know that it can be scary. People don't like change. And I think from the things you've described, you did a really great job at making people feel like safe as they were going through that transition, and like, hey, we're in this together. We're gonna, work through anything together.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I told everybody, on day one with, don't expect perfection. Don't expect everybody around you to have all the answers. It was okay to make mistakes. We met every single day to talk about what was working, what wasn't working. Maybe somebody in the group had the answer and they could share it. We all learned at different paces, different speeds, but we met every day. We made it a safe environment to raise your hand and say, I don't understand this. And it wasn't always me. It definitely was not always me that had the answers. Usually it was somebody else that was in the system and using it that had the answers. So we all got there. And it really did not take long.
Yes. Great. Well, yeah, it looks like we have a few questions in the chat that I can try and answer. I think the first one is a paperless parts question. Alex, looks like you're potentially typing an answer now.
Yeah, I could just go ahead and answer that one live. So thanks for the question, Sean. The question was a paperless parts RFQ email address a paperless parts email address or an email from the customer company? So let me just explain a little bit about how that works. So within your paperless parts user group, you'll have access to a your shop's specific email RFQ address. And what you do with that is you essentially just make a contact within your email client, whether that's Outlook or Gmail, whatever you might be using. And that is your unique email forward address. The front of it is what we call a UUID, but it's basically a unique ID specific for your shop. And you make that contact, and then you're going to just forward your RFQs to that specific email. We have the ability to cycle through those. We don't want those to get out to the broader internet and you risk spam. So we always have the ability to cycle that email address, and you can just re-add that within your paperless parts account. Yeah, and then it looks like the next one, can we use a Surface instead of iPads? So I'll answer on, I think, Alex, we probably both answer this one. So paperless parts, really any place you can get a Chrome tab, you have the ability to use paperless parts. Surface, iPad, both of those will work just fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same on our side. Yeah, it's web-based. We have certain recommendations for screen sizes that are best, and RAM so that it's powerful enough. But outside of that, yeah, a lot of different things work.
Nice. Alex, do you want to take the next one from Anonymous?
Yes. So, oh, you're basically saying you're CMMC. Do you get your own domain or multi-tenant? So we are multi-tenant, but we can work with CMMC customers, and we have a lot of ITAR customers as well. So we have those. It's a separate instance. The data is stored separately, and it's all on the Gov Cloud. And so yeah, we work with a lot of customers who do a lot of government contracting as well.
Yeah, and same on the paperless side as well. We got our FedRAMP moderate equivalency certification last year to enable CMMC level 2 compliant customers to use paperless parts for any of the CUI that they might be working with. Okay, looks like the next one we've got on the line here, this might be a better one for you, Alex. Is there a way to have materials associated with an operation within paperless parts and have that port over to Fulcrum?
So that's basically what what Matt pointed out. Whenever we pulled up the bill of materials, we could say, oh, this material is specifically associated with the laser step. So that I actually don't know the answer to offhand, if there's a concept of that on the paperless side to be able to associate those, but I can follow up. And Stephen, hey. I'll follow up and let you know.
Nice. So we have another one from Anonymous. Is Fulcrum FedRAMP?
That I don't know. I'm not totally sure of all of the different certifications and everything. Is I know that we essentially are able to work with pretty much everyone doing even the highest level of government contracting type of work via the fact that all of our code and software is hosted on platforms that are FedRAMP. So I believe that essentially covers it, but again, same thing here. I can get a more firm answer to it.
Awesome. I think I'll jump in and take the next one. So we have a question from John, and that is, if a new email comes in from a project we are working on, for instance, maybe your customer needed to update quantities, can we add that to the project that's already in progress? You know what, Alex, this could be either of us. So let's both answer this one. In paperless parts, if you need to change quantities, if the quote is in draft, that's really easy to go in and edit quantities within the platform. Once you send a quote, that does lock it from being changed. We make it really easy to copy a quote or create a revision of the quote. That's actually like a perfect textbook case of the time to make a revision of a quote, which is, hey, I actually need quantity 200 instead of 150. You just pop in and make a revision within the platform. So we can do that in paperless on the draft side. Alex, I'll let you jump into if this was a post PO adjustment, what that might look like.
Yeah, you could definitely make updates to things. There's, at a certain point, like if it's already shipped or something like that, there's, some protections in place, or, to make sure that we're not adjusting data in a way that doesn't make sense. But yeah, for the most part, you can make adjustments sort of on the fly. And if someone needs to change a quantity, you can go in the job, update the quantity, and that'll push through to everywhere else, whether that's the scheduler or the shop floor, so everyone can see it.
Nice. Then we've got another one here, which is a good question. How fast is the data fed to Fulcrum once an order is placed in paperless? And does this depend on the size of your paperless parts instance?
Yeah, it doesn't depend on the size or anything like that. So the sync runs every 20 minutes. So every 20 minutes, it'll go and get the new orders and push them over to Fulcrum. We're actually in the process of working on something with paperless parts, so we could subscribe to what's called a webhook, but that paperless parts side essentially could notify us, hey, there's a change, and then we can just pull it instantaneously. So right now it just looks for changes every 20 minutes and pulls them in. And then and then same thing, yeah, on the materials database side, it's just continually syncing and pushing new information over to the paperless side of it as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So on the paperless part side, we have both a streaming API, which is an event-driven architecture, and then we call a REST API, which is more of a polling architecture. And developers have the opportunity to use both depending on what the application is. All right, it looks like there's no other questions in the chat. I guess I'll throw one out to Alex. Alex, if I wanted to learn more about Fulcrum, I know it's a pretty daunting task to try and demo in kind of 20 minutes each, a full quoting and estimating solution. On top of that, an ERP solution, and having Matt kind of chime in with how he's using these. What if I want more information about Fulcrum? What do I do?
Yeah, so we have a ton of information on our website, fulcrumpro.com. We have a YouTube channel that actually has a ton of product videos as well. And then you can always reach out to us, schedule a demo. You can reach out to me directly. We'll get someone on a call to give you a more customized demo.
Awesome. Yeah, and on the paperless parts side, really very similar story. We have paperlessparts.com. You can get tons of information. Paperlessparts.com/demos is a direct demo site where you can go and put in a request for a demo. You also have my email address up here. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out directly to me as well. Looks like we had another question pop in. Alex, looks like you're jumping on the answer there.
Yeah, so the question just showed up. Will repeat parts sales orders pull attachments from Fulcrum or the quote from Paperless Parts? And the answer is it kind of depends on how you want to do it. If you're not requoting it, most people would just like create that order in Fulcrum because you're not doing a new like quoting process. So you can just easily just like create an order for that part in Fulcrum from all the previous, you have all the previous data. If you're pulling a quote for that part again from Paperless Parts, there's sort of a merging that happens now between understanding what information, sort of additional information you may have stored in Fulcrum that wasn't in Paperless, so that we're merging some of that in. So like an example of that is those in-process tracking checkpoints that didn't exist that I showed in the demo. That didn't exist in Paperless Parts, but it did exist on that part in Fulcrum, and it sort of merged those things together. Kind of it depends answer on how you do it.
like so many things in this
Yes.
it depends. All right, I think, Matt, this might actually be a good one for you. The question is, are all customers using this integration in a smooth way, or have there honestly been any roadblocks to standing it up? I guess, do you mind just talking a little bit about your experience standing up this integration with our teams?
Sure. Overall, I'd say it's been smooth. We started using the integration in October. The transfer of the information does happen every 20 minutes. It's great. Where we have had some little hiccups along the way, bringing the data from Paperless into Fulcrum. Fulcrum has been great. The response has been there to alleviate any hiccups. So it works. It works great. I think everybody. I remind everybody here, both companies, Paperless and Fulcrum, are changing and growing their own products on a weekly basis. So sometimes an improvement or a change in Fulcrum or in Paperless, it might not sync right away in Fulcrum because it takes everybody time to adapt and to integrate these things. But it works. And the upside that I see working with two tech companies like Paperless and Fulcrum is worth any little bumps that might come along the way, because they're going to figure it out, and the products are just going to keep on getting better.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Let's see, anything else on, it looks like we've answered everything in the Q&A. And I guess kind of piggyback off what Matt had said, we're actually going to be recording a demo. So this whole webinar has been recorded, but we're actually going to record a demo of a Paperless Parts and Fulcrum customer walking through the integration in a little bit more detail than we were able to go through today, with a live customer account. That'll be available in the next month or so for the team, and that will be sent out once completed. But that can at least help kind of demo some of the more granular functionality between the two systems, which will be helpful for folks to see. All right, well, if there's nothing else, I guess last call for questions in the Q&A. But if not, I want to say thank you so much to Alex and Matt, everybody, for jumping on and listening to us today. There'll be a quick survey at the end of this that'll get sent out to you for jumping on. If you want to fill that out, that would be awesome. And I guess, Alex or Matt, anything else you'd like to add before we log off here?
Nothing. I think I've said it all. It's really been a great investment for our company with both Paperless and Fulcrum. I've got no regrets. I'm only excited for the future.
Hell yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate you joining, and take care.